Today, our test driver Christoph Bauer is taking an unusual Brazilian bestseller for a spin, the VW Brasilia, built in 1980. In the 50s, Brazil became one of VW's most important markets. Back then, the German company only offered two models, the Beetle and the classic van. Even so, its head, Heinrich Nordhoff, gained access to global markets, helping turn Volkswagen into the European carmaker with the highest turnover. Christoph relates the history of VW in Brazil. In 1953, it opened its first foreign plant in Brazil. At first, they built the Beetle there, which would remain the most popular car in Brazil for decades. So popular, even that it got its own nickname, Fusca. The classic VW bus also took South America by storm. By the late 1960s, Rudolf Leiting, then head of VW do Brasil and later chairman of the company, began initiating new tailored models, Christoph explains. Of course, the fundamental platform for it all was the good old Beetle.
Und als Organspender dient natürlich der gute alte Käfer.
Its platform frame and separate body, technology that was both simple and robust, made the practically indestructible VW the perfect starting point for developing new models. Although the way the Beetle was constructed was already outdated by the 1970s, the underlying concept would remain vibrant for years to come. Very clear demands would be made on the new Brazilian VW, Christoph explains. It would have to be even more practical, more efficient, and more spacious than the Beetle. It's said that after 40 different prototypes, the engineers put together a chimera combining all the best features. The 1600cc motor is from the Beetle, the floor segments from the Karmann Ghia, and then mounted a station wagon-style body from the VW Type 3 on top. The series was launched in 1973, says Christoph, and was named after the country's capital, Brasilia. This one is in specially good shape, he thinks, like it just left the factory.
Wie man sieht, da hat jemand das komplette Interieur in durchsichtige Folie gepackt. Was das genau soll, ich habe keine Ahnung. Aber er ist sehr gut erhalten.
At first, the VW Brasilia was also available with 5 doors. For tax purposes, the fastback model was initially marketed as a small delivery van. Bit by bit, the new station wagon grew popularity across the continent. Christoph notices that the combined rear engine and drive make the Brasilia fairly unstable at high speeds. But considering it wasn't easy to reach the car's top speed of 138 kilometers an hour on Brazil's notorious highways, that's no big deal. Marcia Piancastelli was the one who came up with the Brasilia's somewhat peculiar design. He apparently was inspired by variants of Wolfsburg's Type 3 and 4 station wagon models, appropriately called Variant. These, too, had a modern and spacious two-box frame that wasn't self-supporting, but mounted, just like the Beetle. To save it from the ravages of time, the previous owner wrapped the interior in plastic. Not very attractive, but effective. The general idea behind a fastback, Christoph thinks, is to provide more cargo space and make loading easier. But with the Brasilia, that's not really the case. The loading sill is extremely high, and there's hardly any space in the trunk. That's because the 54-horsepower air-cooled 4-cylinder box engine with 1.6 liters displacement is right below. Of course, in good old Beetle style, it's not flat, but upright, with huge fans, and that takes up room. The VW Brasilia is certainly not a perfect car. Owners often complained it had serious rust issues. Legend has it that even light collisions could cause rusted-through floor panels to drop out, taking passengers with them. Despite these defects, Christoph says roughly 1 million VW Brasilias were manufactured and sold in Brazil over 10 years. They also spread to Mexico and Nigeria, where the car was christened the Igala. And even if the Brasilia was always something of a rolling anachronism, buyers could even get it with a 1.3 ethanol motor towards the end of its production life. Ethanol is a commonplace alternative to gasoline in Brazil. Today, most Brazilian vehicles have so-called total flex engines that can handle any mixture of the two fuels regardless of ratio. In Europe, the VW Brasilia has remained a rarity. Only a few of them can be found in Portugal or on the Canary Islands. In many ways, Christoph thinks the VW Brasilia can be considered the final stage of evolution of the Beetle concept from the 1930s. In that sense, he says, it's a milestone in car history. But its predecessor outlived it. While the VW Brasilia was discontinued in 1982, the Beetle continued to be manufactured in Brazil until 1996. It was succeeded by the South American take on the Golf, which remains the most widely sold car on the continent to this day.